Wait a second. Can you talk a little bit for the sound check?
Okay, I'll be sort of talking like this. Is that coming through?
Just a little bit more. If you can talk just a little bit.
Sure.
Okay.
I will talk like this.
Like that will be...
Well, if I start getting too quiet, just remind me.
Yeah, not sure.
Fame, glamour, perfection. What if you could find it all at the tip of a needle? Here at the Lucas Clinic, we strive to bring you closer to celebrity than ever before. With samples drawn directly from the source, you can be connected in ways you never imagined.
It was in 2004, I just started film school, and I was very sick one day. And I had this flu, and I was sort of obsessing over the physicality of the illness and the fact that I had something in my body and in my cells that had come from someone else's body, and how that's kind of a weirdly intimate thing if you think about it that way. So afterwards, I tried to think of a character who might see disease as something intimate, and I thought a celebrity-obsessed fan who wants Angelina Jolie's cold virus as a way of feeling physically connected to her would be a kind of plausible character in a way, and from there it developed into a sort of metaphor that I thought would be good for discussing that culture. I mean, first and foremost, I set out to make a satire. So it's not meant to be a predictive science fiction film necessarily that could actually happen. Everything was, maybe that's, yeah, not just metaphorically, but a satire, a sort of caricature of our culture where things are exaggerated. So it wasn't meant to be hard sci-fi where it's, meant to be a plausible future. But I would say it's more realistic than that. Every once in a while someone says they can't believe that would actually happen, but most people who I talk to say, oh, that's actually terrifying because it's very close to our culture as it is now. They basically sold John Lennon's teeth very recently, and culturally I think it's not too much of an exaggeration.
Do you not agree that the mania surrounding celebrity is reaching an unhealthy level?
No, I don't. My clients want to feel more connected to those people that they see in the magazines and on television.
Enjoy.
I think celebrity culture is connected to the history of religion and to the sort of broader human impulse to deify people and to engage in that kind of worship. Because if you look at, say, the saints and the history of sainthood, it's very related to celebrities. These people who are elevated to the status almost of gods, and there's iconography, and there are images everywhere, and they're well known and worshipped, and there's the same physical fetishism. Old churches that claim to have the finger bone of a certain saint or blood stained on a cloth. So I think it's very whatever that tendency is that has led to celebrity mania in our current society, I think is connected to certain religious impulses as well. Up to a point, you're marketing your film in a way, and I really like having the opportunity to discuss the film. But at a certain point, the focus becomes on you as a person rather than just what you're doing, which is very, yeah, it's weird and kind of terrifying to me. But you can't, or it's very hard to be a filmmaker and not do that, because you're expected to show support for your film, and if you want your film to be seen, you have to, travel around and do interviews, and you become more visible through that.
So far, I've had all her diseases.
Must have been expensive.
Is there any way you could spread it?
I'm not a huge cinephile, actually. I like film. I'm maybe more of a bibliophile than a cinephile. So I don't have the same obsession with people personally. I mean, there are a lot of filmmakers I have a huge deal of respect for, but I think, I don't know, I think when it comes to celebrity culture, for instance, there's that kind of line where it goes from respect and appreciation and, you know, an enjoyment of what someone's doing to then a fixation on the human being themselves, and that's when it stops becoming just fandom in a sort of healthy way and starts to become, you know, an obsession. Like, I was pretty into Pink Floyd when I was a teenager, and that's the closest I came to that kind of fandom, just because I would start reading books about the history of the band and, you know, who they were as people outside of their work. And I think that's kind of one distinction. But I don't really have that with filmmakers. There aren't really. I think Herzog is like a pretty interesting character as a human being. You know, he gets shot on camera and he pulls Joaquin Phoenix out of a car wreck. So he's like kind of a weird superhero, I think, outside of his filmmaking. But I wouldn't want to be locked in a room with Herzog.
What happened to Anna Geist?
It's pretty shocking.
Have you started bleeding yet?
Bleeding?
From your mouth.
I like to think of it as a romantic comedy, actually, but not everyone agrees with that. But I think it is very romantic, even if it's a sort of one-sided romance. Yeah, Caleb, I had seen him, he was in No Country for Old Men when he was a kid, and he was in X-Men First Class, but his agent had worked with my producer before, and so when we were talking about actors to cast, he asked if we wanted to see Caleb's demo reel and some interviews he did for other, auditions he did for other films. And yeah, he's incredible. He has that sort of hard to articulate quality that some actors have, where they're just really fascinating to watch. And he's a very nuanced physical actor, which we needed, and we needed someone, yeah, who would be immediately striking and not get boring, because he's in almost every shot of the film, really. So he just had something that we thought would be great, and then he was even better than I thought he'd be, and it became a good collaboration. And for Sarah, we needed someone who could be, on the one hand, believable as the biggest star in the world, and on the other hand, be a good enough actor that in those scenes where you see her as a human being behind the icon, that she can feel very human and carry the weight of that moment, almost playing two characters. And so Sarah, had that thing. For a little while we were talking about maybe getting a model to shoot, to play that character, because there's so much of it's done in still photography and short video clips, but then someone without serious acting talent wouldn't be able to hold to be believable in those pivotal moments.
I don't understand how this isn't considered cannibalism.
Do you become involved in something sinister?
I would much rather stay in Canada than go to Hollywood. I mean, I think, and there's some great, independent American films, obviously, but when you get into Hollywood and the studio system, I would be worried, especially as a new filmmaker, of just losing control over films. I think when there's a certain amount of money and when you have a huge studio behind you, there are a lot of people who are taking charge of your film and the content of it. So, in Canada, with certainly with my producer and with the right producers, working on that scale, you have a certain amount of freedom. So I'd like to do a slightly bigger film next time, but not so big that I lose control over it.
It's a weird business, Sid.